Hey there, Mighty Math Team. How are you? Okay, so today we're going to take what we learned yesterday about greatest common factors and least common multiples and put them into action. So we are going to be adding and subtracting fractions that do not have a common denominator. So, for example, real quick, mostly we're going to be working with those least common multiples today. Least common multiple is the numbers that you multiply, or the answers to the numbers you multiply together to get, and then you look for the smallest number, makes it easier to work with. So, for example, multiples of 4, because 4 times 1 is 4, 8, because 4 times 2 is 8, 12, because 4 times 3 is 12, 15, not 15, 12, 16, because 4 times 4 is 16, 20, 4 times 5 is 20. So those are my multiples of 4. Okay, so let's take our first problem. I want to add 3/4 plus 5/6. Okay, well, before I can add those, I know my denominator means whole number of parts. So this 3/4 is telling me there's 3 out of 4 parts colored. This 5/6 is telling me that there's 5 out of 6 parts covered. So my parts are not the same size. So I need to make these equivalent to make them the same size to be able to add them. So, because for example, here's my 3/4. So, my 4s are bigger, whereas if I had 6, my parts are smaller. So for me to add 3 of these plus 5 of these, I can't do that equivalently because these parts are bigger than these parts. So I have to make the fractions equivalent to figure out exactly what my answer is. So I need to do my least common multiple. So I'm going to figure out my least common multiple over here. Because remember yesterday I said that least common multiple is going to become your new denominator. So let's figure out what our new denominator is going to be. So 4 times 1 is 4. 4 times 2 is 8. 4 times 3 is 12. Okay, remember, and I said I stop at 3, and if I haven't found one yet, I'll continue on. So my 6. 6 times 1 is 6. 6 times 2 is 12. Oh, look at, there's my least common multiple. So when you're finding a common denominator, that is your first step. Let's write the steps down so we have them when we're practicing in class. So to find a common denominator, 1, find the LCM, which we did. So I'm going to put that in my denominator spot because that's my new denominator. Okay, next is I need to divide my denominators. Okay, so 12 divided by 6 is 2. So I'm going to put a 2 right there. 12 divided by 4 is 3. So I'm going to put a 3 right there, just to help me remember. Pretty soon you're going to know this regularly and you're not going to have to write them there. Now, your third step is to take that quotient that you came up with, and you're going to multiply the quotient by the numerator. And then that is going to become your new numerator. Okay, and boys and girls, remember, this is a video, so you can pause, rewind, fast forward if you miss something. Okay, so it says to multiply that quotient by the numerator. So 2 times 5 is 10. And that's my new numerator. 3 times 3 is 9. That is my new numerator. So what this is telling me is 3/4 is equivalent to 9/12. 5/6 is equivalent to 10/12. And I can check this because I can figure out, okay, what did I do to get from 6 to 12? Multiplied by 2. 6 times 2 is 12. Well, 5 times 2 is 10. Makes it equivalent because remember, whatever you do to the numerator, you must do to the denominator. Okay, let's check this one. To get from 4 to 3, I had to multiply by 12. Or to get to 12, I had to multiply by 3. 4 times 3 is 12. 3 times 3 is 9. Makes them equivalent fractions. And now I have common denominators, so now I can add them, just like I would my fractions from last year. I know my total parts isn't going to change. So the total parts is the same, so that my denominator is going to stay 12. And then I just have to add 9 plus 10 is 19. So my answer is 19/12. Now, can it stay 19/12? Is that in simplest form? No, it is not. It is an improper fraction. So hopefully remember this from last year. We'll talk more about improper fractions as we go along. But last year we learned that if the denominator is smaller than the numerator, it is an improper fraction because that means it's more than 1. Because we know 12/12 is equivalent to 1. So if I have 19/12, I have more than 1. So I'm going to say, okay, 12 goes into 19 one time. I have 7 left over, and I keep my denominator the same because once again, my parts do not change. So my answer is 1 7/12. So taking a little bit from last year, applying it to this year with that unlike denominator. But we do still need to pay attention and realize whether numbers are in simplest form, and that's same with improper fractions. Those are not in simplest form. And I know this is our first day and we'll continue to practice it for the next few weeks. So let's do another practice problem, and then I'm going to give you one on your own. Maybe. Why is it not going forward? There we go. Okay, so let's take the problem. Let's do 2/4 plus 1/2. Okay, to make this let's find my least common multiple. 4 times 1 is 4. 4 times 2 is 8. 4 times 3 is 12. Next one, 2 times 1 is 2. 2 times 2 is 4. Don't have to go any farther. I see the 4. Make that my new denominator. Now, on this top one, that's part of the reason why I did that. If my denominator is the same, that means my numerator is going to be the same. So 2/4 is equivalent to 2/4. So I don't need to go through the dividing in that. So now I'm going to divide and then multiply. 4 divided by 2 is 2. 2 times 1 is 2. 2/4. And hopefully you guys, as soon as I wrote the problems, realized that, oh wait, I know 1/2. I know 2/4 is the same as 1/2. So now we have 2/4 plus 2/4 equals 4/4. And we know 4/4 is equivalent to 1. Okay, so, and with like decimals, when we work with fractions, please square your answers because there's a lot of numbers going on there, and I want to make sure I know what your final answer is, especially on a test and that. So I want to make sure you get all the credit that you can. Okay, so here we go. Let's give you a practice problem to do, and then we'll do some problems, and then we'll be practicing this in school, and I'll be calling, kids to work with me on my white table too. So I would like you to add 2/3 plus 6/9. Find your least common multiple and move on from that. Okay, so 3 times 1 is 3. 3 times 2 is 6. 3 times 3 is 9. Well, I'm going to know 9 times 1 is 9, so that's going to be my least common multiple. So I'm going to put my 9 there, my 9 there. Divide, although I don't have to because I can see my denominators are the same. This one, 9 divided by 3 is 3. 3 times 2 is 6. Wow, once again, 6/9. So I have 6 plus 6 is 12. My numerator stays the same. I can see that my numerator is larger than my denominator. So 9 goes into 12 one time. I have 3 left over. But I know that there's a greatest common factor of 3 and 9, and that would be 3. So I have to divide both these by 3. Now, do you understand why I want you to square your final answer? So I have my 1 that stays the same. 3 divided by 3 is 1. 9 divided by 3 is 3. My final answer is 1 1/3. Okay, so I know we did mostly adding on this, but obviously subtraction is going to be the same way. So you're going to still find your, so I'm going to do one subtraction problem just so you can see. The subtracting is the same, except instead of adding the problems together, you're going to subtract them. So if I have 4/12 minus 1/3, finding my least common multiple, 12 times 1 is 12, 12 times 2 is 24, 12 times 3 is 36. Here we have 3 times 1 is 3, 3 times 2 is 6, 3 times 3 is 9. Oh, nothing yet, so 3 times 4 is 12, which means 12 is my new denominator. Let's divide. 12 divided by 3 is 4. 4 times 1 is 4. And I know this is going to stay the same. Oh, I swear I have not been doing this on purpose. So we have our 4/12 and 4/12. So I'm just going to subtract. 4 minus 4 is 0. And my numerator stays the same. So it's 0/12. Okay, we will be getting into borrowing and carrying and making whole numbers later. So we're not going to worry about that right now. All we're going to do is worry about getting those common denominators. So we want equivalent fractions with common denominators so we're able to add and subtract. Okay, that's all we're concentrating on now. As we get more into fractions, we'll get into the adding and subtracting of whole numbers, borrowing when we need to, and adding. So there you go. And don't forget your keyword. Don't forget to do your form. And I will see you tomorrow.